These are some of the images that likely come to mind when you think about fly fishing. But there's a new generation of fly anglers taking to the water, and they just might change your perception of the sport.
I'm an aggressive fisherman. I get really driven and in the zone.
We can go out and catch 50 fish, and that's fun. What I'm looking for is one big fish.
And as you can see, big fish are this pair's specialty. Ryan Burks of Cabot and Drew Wilson of Fayetteville were both introduced to fishing at an early age, but it wasn't until later in life that they caught the fly fishing bug.
Well, I got into fishing when I was a kid. My parents used to take me. Probably when I was like 2 years old, I think I started. Done it my whole life. That was probably about 6 years ago. I got really consumed by fly fishing, and that's all I want to do now.
Grew up fishing. My dad got me into that from an early age, just always took me along. And my favorite was always going trout fishing. One day we were up fishing with power bait, things like that, worms, and I was watching this gentleman fish with a fly rod, and I guess he was an older guy. He was probably at retirement age, and he could tell I was intently watching and was just interested in what he was doing. And the water started coming up, we were about to have to leave, and he let me cast his fly rod for 5 or 10 minutes from the bank right there. And from that point on, it was just a complete obsession.
That's the spot right there.
For both, their obsession for the sport extends beyond the water. Drew works as a tattoo artist in Fayetteville, and even though this world might seem a long way from the world of Royal Coachman and 6X Tippets, it actually led him into fly fishing.
But from fishing, I was introduced into skateboarding, and from skateboarding, I was introduced into tattooing, which ended up introducing me to fly fishing. So I had to take, full circle back around to fishing. It's always been there for me. I was a tattoo collector, so I would travel and get tattooed by people who I thought were just awesome, and there was a fella in Nashville who I'd wanted to get tattooed by who I knew was a fisherman, and I went to get tattooed by him. I spent my entire morning fishing in Nashville and then went to the shop where my appointment was and just told him I just wanted a fishing lure from him, and he told me that he was only a fly fisherman, so that he wouldn't really know what lure I should get, and I'd never been exposed to fly fishing, and so I told him to do a fly for me then if that's what he liked, and he did, and I left that day and I went and bought a fly rod. After sitting and talking with him the entire time, I felt like maybe he knew something I didn't, or maybe I'd been doing it wrong and he hadn't, and then so I decided it's something I needed to pick up.
Eventually, Drew began focusing more on fish themes in his art and his tattoos.
I started drawing fish art just to give me something to want to draw, because I was getting a little beat down just drawing the same stuff all the time. And I love fishing so much, and I love seeing fish art, and I love seeing fish tattoos, that it felt like when I was doing it, I was getting the best of all of it, because I was making it, I was getting to draw something I enjoyed, and I was looking at fish art, and looking at a fish tattoo, and so it was all things good for me as far as that goes. And I was thinking about it on the way here, about how I've totally just let it consume my life as far as even defining who I am. When I go to a convention or when I go anywhere, people will come up to me and be like, "You're the fisherman." It's a crazy thing to me that people even know who I am when I go anywhere, but to be known as the fisherman or the fishing tattooer, it puts a smile on my face. I love that.
Easy fly to tie.
Ryan, on the other hand, learned the art of fly tying out of necessity.
I probably started tying flies when I was 13 or 14. When I first got started in it, it was under the mistaken idea that it was going to save me money. If you look around this room, you can tell that it probably doesn't save me any money. There's stuff everywhere. But ideally, it was because I was a kid and my fly fishing budget was based on my allowance and how many yards I could mow, things like that. So I absolutely had to budget what I could, and flies are $2 a piece at the store. And I got to doing the math and thought that I could tie them cheaper. My my flies may have only lasted for one fish, but I could tie them cheaper, and that's kind of how it got started, and it evolved from there.
That evolution led Ryan to start swinging bridge flies.
Swinging bridge flies is kind of only really maybe 3 or 4 years old, I guess. I started tying flies commercially for a fly shop when I was in college, just some extra money, something that I enjoyed doing. So I was in my dorm room tying flies. That fly shop actually closed down, and I was left with all these wholesale accounts and stuff like that that I order from, and had to figure out something to do with it to keep it going. So started marketing swinging bridge flies, and that's that.
The satisfaction he gets from creating his own flies is unmatched.
To me, it's super cool. It's kind of like calling ducks or anything else like that. Just the interaction that you get with the fish from something that you made, fly that I made myself. It does what I want it to do in the water, and it gets the result that I want. Fish comes out and eats it. It's just kind of cool to see it all come full circle. And I try as much as I can to put in feathers from ducks that I've killed, and deer tails and deer hair that from deer that me and my buddies have harvested. And it's just a lot of fun that way.
It was probably inevitable that these two anglers would meet, but in this age of social media, Instagram sped up the process.
I met Ryan through Instagram, and I was following him, looking at the flies he was tying, and he was following me, looking at the tattoos I was doing. And I was visiting my mom in Little Rock on Thanksgiving one year, and I was messaging Ryan once about coming up and fishing with him. So I woke up at the same time as my mom did when she was going Black Friday shopping, and I drove up to the Little Red at 4 in the morning to meet Ryan, and we went fishing.
Yeah, I think he had just seen me putting pictures up of fish on the Little Red and fish I was catching. He happened to be coming down. I happened to be having a day off, whatever the case was, but he sent me a message, hey man, would you, show me where you're catching some of these fish at? And I said, come on down, and so we hooked up, went fishing, and been friends ever since.
Coming up after the break, we'll head out with these two in search of trophy trout on the Little Red River. Ryan Burks and Drew Wilson headed out on a brisk November morning in search of some trophy brown trout on the Little Red River. An overnight cold front dropped the temperature to just above freezing, and the cold air wasn't the day's only unwelcome guest.
Right now, fishing for brown trout primarily, throwing big streamers, long, 5-inch, 6-inch long flies, kind of trophy hunting, I guess, if you will, for trout. You don't shoot a huge buck every time you go out, and that's kind of the same concept with what we're doing here. We're looking for one good fish. Right now the trout are in a pre-spawn. They haven't started spawning, so in theory they should be aggressive, kind of queued up, territorial, and
man, I'm just kidding, it's some moss.
And hopefully they're ready to attack some big flies. We'll see here in just a minute.
Hydropower generation at Greer's Ferry Dam brought some unexpected problems to the surface.
The water's high right now, which should put all the fish tight to the banks. That's kind of what we're doing, just ripping big flies off the bank and hoping to aggravate one.
Dry conditions and the high water combined to fill the river with leaves and debris, making it a constant battle to keep flies clean and lifelike. But finally, Drew scored.
There's a fish.
Got him?
Yeah. Man, those rocks look so good. I was just saying it. Come on, buddy. Stay with us.
Yes, sir.
And soon, Ryan was on the board. They weren't the trophy browns the pair was seeking, but that's one of the risks of this technique.
Streamer days are kind of funny because you'll have days where you cast all day, and catch 2 or 3 fish if you're lucky, and then you'll have days where you go out and you catch 30. You just never know what you're going to get. and it's those 30 days that really keep you coming back. But even on those days where you catch, 2 or 3 fish in a day, it's still a good day.
Ryan has spent much of his life on the Little Red River and has noticed a change in the demographics of fly anglers in recent years.
But there's definitely a lot of younger people getting into it now. Seeing a lot more ladies, women involved in it than what I used to typically. So it's definitely changing a lot. There's a lot of the 20 to 30, and you see a lot of fathers and sons and daughters and stuff like that out on the water now.
And while the fishing may not have been the greatest, when you tie flies like Ryan,
There you go, brother.
sometimes a day on the water can be followed by a trip to the bank.
It's the guy that hit me up on Instagram, wanted some streamers, and happened to be on the river today, so made a little waterside transaction.
It wasn't exactly the kind of trip that resulted in Drew and Ryan loading Instagram with big fish pictures, but it's hard to beat even a slow day on an Arkansas trout stream.
Lot better than sitting around on the couch, beautiful day, sun shining, can't ask for much more.